Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine TV Recruiting Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Holland. Alongside me is my co-host, Tim Vergeese. If you're not subscribed to the Wolverine.com, make sure to do so today for just $1. Head over to the Wolverine.com, click the subscribe button. It's just $1, and make sure to subscribe here to our YouTube channel, which is completely free. Tim and I were on the road this week. We hit up a couple of events down south. I was in Gatlinburg, Tennessee for the Rocky Top 7v7 tournament. Tim was at Under Armour Atlanta. We'll go to you first, Tim. A lot of prospects in the Southeast. Tell me kind of what your experience was like down there, what your biggest takeaways were from a Michigan perspective.
Yeah, somewhat of a busy weekend for me. Hit up Pylon Houston on Saturday, and then make the quick flight out to Atlanta for the Under Armour Atlanta camp. Talked to about 17 or 18 plus, Michigan targets from the event. So definitely we'll have a lot over at the Wolverine.com here in the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for all of that. I guess the key takeaways for me, one was Xavier Micleod. He was a defensive lineman Michigan recently offered. Micleod was actually offered by Dylan Roney when Dylan Roney was taking over some road responsibilities while former defensive coordinator Mike McDonald was interviewing with the Ravens and eventually obviously took that job. So he's building a good relationship with Roney and has started to talk to Elston as well. He mentioned he wants to get both coaches on the phone with his parents to continue to strengthen that relationship. And he already is planning to visit Michigan twice this offseason. He wants to visit for the spring game and then wants to use an official visit on Michigan as well. So Michigan's in a pretty good spot early. Obviously, have to fend off some of the usual suspects when you're recruiting a four-star down south, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, those type of schools. So that was one that really stood out as far as a serious Michigan target. Another one was Jamal Jarrett, and Jarrett was one that we've talked about before as that recruitment's kind of been up and down as far as Michigan goes. He even mentioned, he felt really good about Michigan and was really intrigued with the Wolverines back when Sean Newell was the D-line coach. And, it was initially disappointed when Newell left because he just didn't know what his status was going to be with Michigan at that point. But then when Elston came over, Elston made him a priority, got him on a FaceTime within his first week on campus, and is already pushing to get Jarrett on campus. He's going to look to try and use one of his official visits on Michigan. He's actually been talking to Jim Harbaugh as well, which I found particularly notable. He's bonded well with Harbaugh, and I should have an article on him kind of explaining where things stand with him in Michigan at some point this week, so stay tuned for that. Those are the two big ones for me. Paul Mubenga was another one. He's an interior lineman from Buford High School. He's seen kind of as a versatile piece on the offensive line, and he's looking to visit for the spring game as well. But potentially could even visit even earlier. He's got kind of some dates lined up in March to visit a couple of schools, and could potentially fit in a Michigan visit in the last weekend of March. And if he's not able to make it up for that, obviously he's going to make it up for the spring game. He's kind of not started to figure out what his official visit plans really look like, but I could see Michigan getting one if they see him as a take and want to, kind of make him a serious target. So that's a guy that, I think I've forgotten about sometimes as well after I saw him in the fall, but, he's kind of up and down on the board. You just never know with him. But after talking to him, I kind of feel good about where Michigan stands. And if Michigan really wants him, depending on how the interior board shakes out, I think he could be a guy that Michigan eventually lands. Those are some of the key O-line, D-line takeaways. Outside of that, there were some other interesting names. Some underclassmen. I would say one big takeaway is we've kind of understated the impact of Ashawn Larkin's departure, and I'm not sure if you've heard the same, EJ, from your time in the South. Pretty much every single 2024 or 2025 prospect I talked to in the region all mentioned the fact that Ashawn was their primary recruiter. They all have a lot of interest in Michigan. One key name is DeBron Gatling. He is a Detroit native, but has now moved out to Georgia. He plays at Milton Academy. But his primary primary contact was Ashawn for a while, and he was pretty stunned when Ashawn left. Bellamy's kind of taken over that recruitment, re-offered him actually last week, and kind of showing him that he is still a priority for Michigan. Gatling's going to try and visit this offseason, but it's going to be I think that's one where Michigan can legitimately win. He told me he's still got a lot of family back in Detroit that are trying to get him, really pushing him to come back to his home state to play his college football. But no, I included it in my notes from the week. Just the departure of Ashawn is legitimately being felt down south, and Michigan's going to have to figure out some way to mend some of those relationships because there's a lot of interest in those guys. They just need to hear some more consistent communication from Michigan now that Larkins has departed.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of bounce off of some of the groundwork that Tim laid out there, I think with Larkins, his primary focus was more on underclassmen, like Tim mentioned, so 2024, 2025. So there's still plenty of time for Michigan to make up, some ground there. I think a guy that's really going to have a lot of say there is Dylan Roney, who Tim mentioned was on the road in place of Mike McDonald when McDonald was interviewing to get back to the NFL. Roney's a guy that, went out there, met all the high school coaches, offered a couple of guys. I think he's going to kind of maybe take over as that point man. And then Michigan just does a really good job of positional recruiting. So like you mentioned, Ron Bellamy will take over for DeBron Gatling. So I think, Larkins really didn't have an impact too much, as far as his departure in 2023, but it's more about just rebuilding those connections with some of the underclassmen. You can never really be too early in recruiting. So you want to make sure those relationships, stay afloat. And then, just quick thoughts on my end. I haven't really seen a lot of those guys in the Southeast, but just, watching film, talking to sources in Ann Arbor, I really like Jamal Jarrett. I really like Xavier McLeod. Those two guys that I feel like Michigan can land. They just have to get them on campus this offseason. I know the staff's working really hard, but you look at Xavier in particular, he's from South Carolina. Michigan doesn't get a lot of guys from South Carolina. I think CJ Stokes was the first one in like 20 years or something. But I think landing CJ Stokes last cycle, 3-star running back out of Columbia, opens the door for Michigan to maybe get a couple more from South Carolina. You never know. I think that the Wolverines have a chance to make an impact there. And McLeod's definitely one to watch. And then Jarrett, just a massive 300-pounder that's going to be a key target moving forward. On my end, I was in, like I said, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, went out to the Rocky Top 7 versus V7 tournament. All eyes were on Dante Moore, obviously the consensus 5-star quarterback out of Detroit King. Dante, I mean, first of all, before we get into his recruitment, we talked a little bit about it last week. But as far as his play, I mean, he was phenomenal. He's clearly the best quarterback there. I mean, he has everything you want in a signal caller. As far as, the intangibles, he's a leader. I mean, guys rally around him. He's a winner. He led Max X to a 7-on-7 championship in that tournament, but just his ball placement, you can see it. I put out some clips today, just a full clip on our YouTube channel, which you can go watch. And I mean, some of those balls he throws are just really impressive. And the big thing is that ball placement. It's just like, wow, he can put it really wherever he wants. He has a more than adequate arm strength. He's very accurate, short, intermediate, deep, just throws a really nice deep ball. I mean, there isn't enough great things to say about Dante Moore. So, he checks all the boxes. Obviously, he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the country. Now, can Michigan land him? That's obviously the question that you are most interested in. Look, there's been a lot of Notre Dame buzz as of late, but Dante is not completely sold on Notre Dame. That's why he is not committed there. He is not committing anytime soon either. He wants to make his visit. He's looking to make a decision in the summer. And that's not to discount Notre Dame. I think they're a legitimate player. I think if, he had to pick a school today, Notre Dame would be a very strong contender, would be the school I'd fear the most. But overall, it's still a long way to go here. He's been to Michigan many times. He's held an offer since he was a middle schooler. Ron Bellamy has known him since he was a middle schooler, has a great relationship with both Bellamy and Steve Klinkscale, his area recruiters, as well as head coach Jim Harbaugh. Really likes Matt Weiss's football acumen. So with Michigan, I think they just need to continue to get him on campus, continue to sell him on him being the guy, and just make sure his relationships continue to improve with Weiss, as well as new co-offensive coordinator Sharon Moore. But still a long way to go there. There's still some other schools involved as well. He's visiting LSU this weekend. Miami's another school down south. Texas and Georgia are becoming more interested, so that's something to watch. Back up into the Midwest, obviously you have the usual suspects: Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State is kind of hot and cold there. But yeah, I mean, Michigan's still very, very much in that recruitment. So I have a lot of great Dante stuff over at the Wolverine. Samaj Morgan, Michigan's wide receiver commit, was one of the stars of the tournament. I mean, he was completely dominant. I wrote in our hot buttons topic that asked the question, which recruit are you higher on after seeing them live this weekend? And I made a kind of a surprise pick in Samaj Morgan just because I've seen him 100 times. I've known him since he was an underclassman, and I've always been high on Samaj. I've always liked his game. He's a 5'9" slot receiver, but he's a guy that just makes plays. He's really, really fun to watch. I think he's a perfect fit for that AJ Henning role. I think when you look at Samaj compared to AJ, Samaj is a better route runner at this point, considering where AJ was at this point in his recruitment. Samaj is a better route runner, a more natural pass catcher, but AJ was faster and more explosive. I think Samaj has improved in both of those areas. He looks plenty fast. He looks more explosive. He's been running a lot of tracks, so you can see that speed improving there. He brings a lot of speed in space, and he's a guy that can take a top off of defense too. And even though he's 5'9", he plays big. He has like that bulldog mentality. He's really aggressive. He's a really animated guy, and the other kids love him too. So I think he'll be a great fit at Michigan. And actually, Samaj, he went down from Detroit to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and then kept going south. Tim actually had a chance to get a quick look at him in some reps down at the Under Armour Atlanta camp. I'm sure after playing like for 12 hours in the rain, Samaj was a little gassed, but what did you see from him out in Atlanta?
Yeah, really like what I saw from him. I was going to comment for sure that I did see him, look good in drills and then look good in one-on-ones. It was a slick day down in Atlanta, I'm sure, just as it was in Tennessee. So there were some drops by everyone. He had one or two drops, but can't really blame it on him. It's more of just the weather. I've seen him in a 7-on-7 setting. You've seen him a ton of times. Drops or not an issue for him. But again, before the ball got there, I mean, he just flashed as a route runner once again. He just routed up bigger cornerbacks, faster cornerbacks. Again, I think the size is going to be something that's always going to hold him back from a ranking standpoint, but I don't think it matters. Again, he just does so many things right. And again, on top of all of that, he's got the right mentality. Really, like when I saw him down at Battle Miami, he took the team on his back. Even a Max X team that had Dante Moore late in games, if he takes a game personally, you'll feel it, and you'll feel him in those games, and he'll make sure the ball's in his hands. He makes sure he's making the plays. I'm sure EJ, you noticed that as well. I think he's going to fit really well in Michigan's system, and I think he's going to be quite comfortable, around guys. Obviously, Bellamy was his former head coach, so I think he's going to feel really comfortable in Michigan's system.
Definitely. So for me, some other guys I had a chance to see, not a whole lot in the 23 class. I was more so focused on Dante and Samaj, but looking at some of the in-staters in 2024, CJ Carr was obviously one I watched closely, quarterback, in-state quarterback, legacy guy. Everybody knows who CJ Carr is, grandson of Lloyd Carr, has a ton of other Michigan connections as well. But CJ just had a really good day. I didn't see him as much as Dante just because of scheduling, and times and games were going at the same time. But in the games that I did see him, he was just really consistent. And that's what I like about CJ. He has a really high floor. He's great. He's fundamentally sound, great mechanics, great feet, really poised, accurate, short to intermediate routes. Doesn't have an amazing arm. He won't wow you, with his arm strength, but he can push the ball down the field. I just think CJ checks a lot of boxes. He just does a lot of things right. And I think he would be, Michigan's lucky enough to get Dante Moore. CJ would be a great land right after him. Some other 24s, Jeremiah Beasley at Belleville really caught my attention. That's a guy I'm also higher on after watching live this weekend. Really athletic linebacker, not the biggest guy, about 6 foot, 205 pounds, but he can fly all over the field. Sideline to sideline speed is great. To play in Michigan's defense, you need to get moving sideline to sideline. Beasley can do that, look comfortable in coverage. Obviously, Michigan's had its up and downs in recruiting Belleville, but I do think Beasley's a guy that Michigan really likes and would be a really great system fit. Jacob Oden, 2024 defensive back out of Harper Woods, Michigan. Really like him. Long, rangy safety, despite not being, the 6'2" or 6'3". He's closer to 6 feet right now. If he grows, 2 inches, I think this is a guy that's a 5-star level guy. He's really, again, well coached. His dad is the head coach at Harper Woods. He's a Michigan legacy, smart kid. Good instincts, came away with a couple of interceptions when I watched him play. So I think Jacob Oden is definitely one that Michigan fans should get more familiar with as we move into 2024, since he is a legacy recruit and seems to really love Michigan early on. And then going down, climbing down the ladder into the lower classes, 2025, really interesting quarterback, Bryce Underwood. Is 6'3", 205 pounds. It looks big for a freshman. Led Belleville to a state title as a freshman. He could be next in the line of quarterbacks that the state of Michigan is producing. Michigan already has an early offer out to him. And then just really quick, another kid I really like in the lower end classes, 2026, CJ Sadler, already has a couple offers, definitely on Michigan's radar. He's kind of going to be the next big thing. You're going to go back on this video and you're not going to remember CJ Sadler, but years from now, I will pull up this video and I'm going to say, remember when I told you guys about CJ Sadler? He's going to be the next 5-star guy. So that was it's interesting. I went down to Tennessee and I just saw all the same guys I usually see. So we made an 8-hour bus drive to see the same guys that I see on a consistent basis there. It was kind of a weaker tournament. There was a lot of events going on, so really didn't get to see a whole lot of out-of-region prospects, but it was really nice to get to see the in-state guys and see them in a setting down south. So I think overall productive weekend for me and you, Tim. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, not a whole lot more. I would say, it was a loaded weekend for me. Didn't even get to touch on everything I saw this weekend. So stay tuned over at thewolverine.com for full notes from the weekend. We'll have so much content that, there's still going to be stuff from this weekend that comes out over the next 2 weeks. Heck, I didn't even touch on the Pylon Houston tournament I was at, and I saw 3-4 Michigan targets at that event. So stay tuned over at thewolverine.com. We'll have some discussions. If you have any questions about any guys we saw, me and EJ are always available on the fort as well. So stay tuned.